Well, hello there, and welcome to another edition of Warbird Wednesday. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum, and today we are going to talk about one of the most interesting, crazy, insane ideas that I have ever come across, and that was the Convair, the NB-36H, the nuclear bomber. No, I am not talking about a bomber that drops a nuclear weapon. I am talking about a bomber that was powered by a nuclear reactor. Crazy idea? Pretty crazy. So we're going to cover that today as we march down X-planes. This is probably the most insane X-plane I have ever seen. And Greg has really outdone himself in that I am wearing today a Swiss civil defense helmet, which in keeping with nuclear reactors works for me. Actually pretty interesting. Not a head breaker. Now this one's heavy, Greg, so we're going to catch it. A good catch by the Kenny. So we've talked about I wouldn't say disdain, but my amazement that the United States ever built the B-36. Really, don't get me wrong. I mean, from an engineering standpoint, what a cool airplane. I never got to see one fly, but I'll throw up a plan view of the airplane here. I never was able to see one of these in service. I have seen one on the ground, even on the ground in really a static display. This is an amazing airplane, but it is absolutely enormous. Now, for some reason, the United States in 1946 decided that they were going to attempt to put a nuclear reactor into an airplane and use a nuclear reactor and the nuclear fission to be able to figure out how to power an airplane. Does that sound insane? It does. But at the time, you got to remember, we're coming out of the World War II. We're embracing, if you go back and you look at the day in the nuclear activity of the day, everything was better with something atomic, right? So they felt that they didn't really understand, we'd use the bombs, but they didn't really understand all the applications and I think some of the ramifications of nuclear weapons and nuclear activity and what the downside could be. Basically, that you can basically read by the glowing of your body for 500 years if you manage to get yourself enough radiation. I don't think they really understood that. And you could see that, the atomic weapons test where they had the guys in the trenches and they're firing the nuclear artillery, or at Bikini where they've got guys out standing on the decks watching the bomb go off. They just didn't get that at that point radiation was not your friend. So they basically decided, okay, we're going to put a nuclear reactor and figure out how to power the engines. And so what they set about was there was a B-36 that had been damaged in the storm. And with the program, the Aircraft Nuclear Program, the ANP that I talked about started in 1946, they had been going along, and then this aircraft presented itself because it had been damaged. So they took it in, they reworked it, they stuck a nuclear reactor in it, and it first flew in September of 1955. So they put a nuclear reactor. Now what they wanted to see was, first of all, could they fly with a functioning nuclear reactor? They put the nuclear reactor in the bomb bay, and then they proceeded to fly with the airplane and see whether they could not irradiate the crew. They got that right, that they didn't want to cook the crew with the reactor. They figured out that actually worked. This aircraft, it was nicknamed the Crusader, actually flew 40 or 50 times around Texas and over New Mexico. Can you imagine today taking a B-52 and trying to get people to agree that you're going to fly anywhere in the United States with an airborne functioning nuclear reactor. But they did it. Now, the next phase of this was they looked at engines. And this is where I'm going to really throw this at Greg. We've got to get some graphics up there. Greg will throw up some graphics if he can find them. But there were two different types of engines that they were going to use. There was direct air cycle concept that was being worked on by GE, and there was an indirect cycle concept that was being developed by Pratt & Whitney. By the way, both of those companies, you can tell, are still in the engine business and have been in the business for a long time. So the idea was that you had a functioning nuclear reactor in the airplane. You would eliminate the combustion that's in the engine with the jet engine that is spinning the turbine. However you do that, and you would take the heat energy, right, from the reactor, somehow convert it so that it would spin the turbine. That is really it in a nutshell, okay? So, and you got to figure out how to get the energy from here out to spinning the turbines, which in turn, because these are turboprops, spins the blades. So there were two different ways that they went at this. The direct air cycle used a plenum. You would run that hot air through the plenum, and the plenum and that action would spin the turbine. I'm being very top level on this. The indirect air cycle used a heat exchanger. And the heat exchanger, and there's a difference between a plenum and a heat exchanger, and they would use the energy from that again to spin the turbines. So theoretically, they actually made this work. I mean, it is GE actually developed with the J47 engine the ability to actually do proof of concept that this would actually work. Forget the ridiculously crazy safety stuff, but they could fly with this. Now, as I said, the aircraft actually flew 47 times with a live nuclear reactor in its belly.
After the nuclear test aircraft and its escort, a B-50, arrive at the test corridor, which is well removed from populated areas, preparations are made to start reactor operation. The reactor is started by withdrawal of the safety rod, the dynamic control rod, and the shim safety rod. Various conditions of hot flight operation are monitored and adjusted by the nuclear engineer. When the desired power conditions are reached, the reactor power is stabilized and the recording of nuclear shielding data begins. Radiation levels are measured by the flight test engineer in the cabin as well as throughout the airplane fuselage during reactor operation. Flux patterns of air-scattered radiation around the nuclear test aircraft are obtained by special instruments in the B-50 escort plane. Upon completion of the data runs, the reactor is shut down in preparation for the return flight.
They never went from the test, the actual test of the reactor to the engines. They never got that far. So, but they did do the entire proof of concept. Now they did it, this is an enormous airplane. If you're gonna do it, this is the airplane to do it in because you got a lot of room to work in there. But they actually proved that that would work. Now, I wanna today go to my salute, and I mentioned these people, and that is all of those soldiers, and I'm talking about airmen, sailors, Marines, that actually went out on those artillery tests or stood at Bikini Atoll and witnessed those tests. I want to salute them today because they are really unsung heroes in the service of our country. If you think about that, nobody understood at the time how dangerous that radiation was. And if you look at that stuff, they're getting covered in it, both in the shock waves and at Bikini, they're getting irradiated. So I want to salute all the people that were involved in that program, because you're unsung heroes and no one ever really talks about them. And there were thousands of them. So today, if I can get this open, this might be the first one that we can't. Got it open, Greg. This is a scary one. And there was no fizz, although there's a little fizz there. Today, we are going, Greg has gone, I would say, completely off the deep end. This is Muammar Gaddafi soda. That's the great Libyan dictator who has now passed into history. It is liberating your taste. That remains to be seen. I've said this before. Who bottles this? Is there a huge market for Libyan strongman soda? I guess there must be. This is Cream My People soda. He's like, you really are going to say that? That's what it says. Cream My People soda. Gaddafi did get the pure cane sugar marketing memo wherever he's selling this stuff. Let's see, it does have a California cash refund, so whoever is tied to Gaddafi is at least somewhat recycling conscious, whatever his estate is doing. I wonder, do you have to license his image? I don't know that, probably. All right, so we're going to see how well Gaddafi is at providing soda. No. We'll do one more. Greg's holding his fingers. 2 tastes here. I got it. Greg. Yeah, he's holding it. I'm doing it. Oh. That's just proof that a Libyan dictator does not know how to make soda. That may be what happened to him. Oh, my word. That's awful. It's going to take days for me to get that out of my palate, I think. So this was a unique concept. Now, they did build a number of reactors, and those are actually, you can view those reactors, Greg, at the Idaho National Labs. They actually have a couple of those airborne reactors where you can actually go and look at them, which is kind of cool. So the United States flirted with a lot of different nuclear power ideas when atoms were everything. As I said, the SLAM system, which was a cruise missile, they did a number of these things. But at the end of the day, I think they started to realize at the end of the 60s that this was just an idea that wasn't going anywhere. Part of the problem was the amount of, when you get way down in the engineering, the amount of shielding in the airplane was just ridiculous, both the glass and the shielding that had to go into the containment vessel. And then the other problem you've got is what happens if one of these gets shot down and you've got plutonium and if you get into this, I said the engineering on this is very complex with these engines, these jet engines, and you have fissionable material, nuclear rods in the system. And so you're basically sending an aircraft into harm's way that very well could get shot down. And if it ends up on the ground, you've got nuclear material everywhere. And so, and it can be very dangerous. We've been talking a lot about Ukraine, but look at the Chernobyl site that the Russians were just at, that they're not rumors that, the Russians dug trenches and they did stuff around there. They all got sick, and that's not rumor, that's actual fact. And think about how long Chernobyl was. Can you imagine 100 of these things running around, and let's say 20 or 30 of them get shot down, or if they land in friendly territory, and now we've contaminated, another country. So, my miniature assistant, I got you. I brought it in. There was a kind of a sneak attack on our word today. What happened was John F. Kennedy came in 1961 and killed the program. He shut the program down. Now, the thing about this is how much money was spent, Greg. In 1961 dollars, I might add, $1 billion. But yeah, they spent $1 billion on this program from 1946 to 1961. Adjusted for inflation, I can't even calculate, but it's a ridiculous amount of money. So, this is one of those things where, and Greg and I were talking about before we shot this, this is just throwing a lot of money at a really bad idea. And somebody along the food chain just ever raised their hand and said, this is a terrible idea. The airplane was scrapped, and that's probably, obviously, with the material in it, it was scrapped and sent away. The follow-on aircraft was the Convair, the X6, which never went anywhere. So that was a prototype airplane. It was never built, and that, with Kennedy shutting it down, the program, I think this is one of those where I think that was actually a good thing. I never like to see things peter out, but I think in this case, this was just a really, really insane idea. Now, if you are a fan of one-off airplanes or unusual airplanes, and you wish to own a piece of a B-36, you can actually do that. Jason will put in here. These are really cool. These are plane tags, and these are skins of various aircraft. Let's see, what do we have today? We have the B-36, the CV-580, and the Convair, the CV-990. So these are actual skin of the airplanes. You can send a little missive or click on the link with Jason, and Jason will gladly sell you one of these. These are pretty cool. If you want to have a B-36, that's about as close as you're going to get to having one. So click on that link. If you were coming across us, all we do is talk about aircraft, and at this time we're talking about experimental aircraft. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you like us on YouTube, give us a like or a comment, especially if you want to do that. If you came across us on Facebook, we'd love to have a like. Also, I'm standing in the Miles hangar today in front of our wall of honor that we do from our gala every year. We cannot do this without your support. So click on that link, give us a few bucks. We don't need $1 billion to chase an atomic reactor that is somewhere in Idaho, but we can use a few dollars to continue our mission. My name is Fred Bell. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day.